Cold billionaire CEO signed a contract marriage to save his empire. The woman who showed up at his company the next week was the wife he never looked at twice. The rain hammered against the windows of the Manhattan courthouse like 1,000 tiny fists demanding to be heard. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed with indifference, casting a sterile glow over rows of empty wooden benches. Elena Carter sat alone in the waiting room, her hands folded tightly in her lap. 24 years old, wearing a borrowed cream dress that didn't quite fit. Her dark hair pulled back simply. No jewelry, no makeup. Just the weight of a decision that would change everything. In her purse, folded into a small square, was a hospital bill with numbers that made her stomach turn. Her grandmother, stage 4. The surgery wasn't covered. The clock was ticking, and so here she was, about to marry a stranger. The door opened. He walked in like winter itself had taken human form. Damien Blackwell, 32, 6'2", charcoal suit tailored to perfection, not a thread out of place. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, his eyes the color of frozen steel. He moved with the kind of precision that came from a lifetime of control, every step measured, every breath calculated. He didn't look at her. Not really. His lawyer did all the talking. "Miss Carter, this is Mr. Blackwell. As outlined in the contract, this marriage is strictly a legal arrangement. Duration, 1 year. You will receive $50,000 upon signing, with an additional $100,000 at the end of the term, provided all conditions are met." Eleanor's throat was dry. She nodded. Damien still hadn't looked at her. He was reading something on his phone, his expression carved from marble. Unreadable, unreachable. "Do you have any questions?" the lawyer asked. She wanted to ask 1,000 things. Why are you doing this? What kind of man marries someone he won't even look at? Do you have a heart in there somewhere? But instead she whispered, "No." "Then let's proceed." The ceremony lasted 7 minutes. A judge with tired eyes read from a script he'd recited 1,000 times before. Damien signed the papers without hesitation, his signature a sharp slash of black ink. When it was Elena's turn, her hand trembled slightly. She glanced at him once, just once, hoping for something. A smile, a nod, any sign that he saw her as more than a signature on a page. He was already checking his watch. "Congratulations," the judge said flatly. "You're now legally married." Damien extended his hand, not to hold hers, to shake it, like she was a business partner, like they'd just closed a deal on office furniture. His palm was cold. "The money will be transferred within the hour," he said. His voice was low, clipped, efficient. "My assistant will contact you with the details of the arrangement. We won't need to see each other unless absolutely necessary." And then he left. Elena stood there in the empty courthouse, the rain still falling outside, holding a marriage certificate that felt like a piece of paper and nothing more. She told herself it didn't matter. This wasn't about love. This was about survival. Her grandmother would live. That was all that mattered. She didn't cry. She just walked out into the rain, letting it wash over her, cold and cleansing and real. 1 week later, the Blackwell Industries Tower rose like a blade of glass and steel into the gray Manhattan sky, its 70 floors gleaming even under the heavy clouds. Elena stood at the base, staring up, her reflection fractured in the polished windows. She'd gotten the job 3 days ago, junior assistant in the design department, Entry level, $22 an hour. It wasn't much, but combined with the first payment from the marriage contract, it would cover the surgery and give her grandmother a fighting chance. She didn't know who owned the company. The job listing had just said Fortune 500 Corporation. She'd been so focused on the salary, on the benefits, on the lifeline it represented, that she hadn't even looked up the name. Blackwell Industries. She should have known, but she didn't, not yet. Eleanor's pushed through the revolving doors into a lobby that looked like it belonged in a museum. White marble floors stretched endlessly. Modern art hung on the walls, splashes of color that probably cost more than her entire life. The ceiling was 3 stories high, with geometric skylights that let in slices of gray morning light. She felt small, out of place, like she was trespassing in a world that didn't want her. "You must be the new hire." A woman in a tight black dress and heels that could double as weapons looked her up and down with barely concealed disdain. Her name tag read, Victoria Chen, Senior Executive Assistant. "Yes," Elena said, trying to smile. "Elena Carter. I'm starting in the design department today." Victoria's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "How quaint. Follow me." They rode the elevator in silence. Victoria checked her phone. Eleanor watched the numbers climb. 20, 30, 40. The air felt thinner the higher they went. "Few rules," Victoria said without looking up. "Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't touch anything on the executive floor. And whatever you do, don't make eye contact with him." Elena blinked. "Him?" "The CEO." Victoria's voice dropped like she was naming something dangerous. "Damien Blackwell. He doesn't tolerate incompetence. Last month he fired someone for being 3 minutes late to a meeting. The month before he fired someone for using the wrong font in a presentation." Elena's stomach tightened. She'd heard of bosses like this, corporate monsters who treated people like disposable tools. The elevator stopped on the 42nd floor. "This is you," Victoria said. "Try not to embarrass yourself." The doors opened to reveal an open-plan office, all glass partitions and sleek desks and people in expensive clothes, typing furiously, their faces tight with stress. Eleanor could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. A man in his 50s approached, his smile strained. "Miss Carter, I'm Harold, department head. Welcome. Let's get you set up." He walked her to a small desk in the corner near the back by the supply closet. No window, no view, just a computer, a phone, and a stack of files that looked like it hadn't been touched in months. "You'll be handling data entry and filing for now," Harold said. "Nothing too complicated. Just try to stay under the radar. And if you see Mr. Blackwell, make yourself invisible. Trust me." Eleanor nodded, her mouth dry. She spent the morning drowning in spreadsheets and forms, her eyes blurring from the fluorescent lights. Around noon, a commotion rippled through the office. People straightened, voices dropped, someone actually ducked behind a partition, and then she heard it. Footsteps, sharp, precise, coming closer. Elena looked up. He walked past her desk like a storm front moving through. Charcoal suit, steel eyes, that same carved marble expression. He was talking to someone beside him, his voice low and cutting. "I don't care what the board thinks. If they can't deliver on time, replace them. We don't reward failure." Damien Blackwell, the CEO, her boss, and her husband. But he didn't see her. He walked right past, his gaze fixed ahead, his world contained in a radius of exactly 3 feet around him. Everyone else was just background noise. Elena's heart was in her throat. He didn't recognize her, not even a flicker. And in that moment, sitting at her tiny desk in the corner, invisible to the man she'd legally married 7 days ago, Elena understood something cold and clear. To him, she had never existed at all. The afternoon light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the office into a gallery of shadows and glass. Elena kept her head down, her fingers moving mechanically across the keyboard, but her mind was spinning. He doesn't know. The thought circled like a vulture. Damien Blackwell, her husband on paper, a stranger in reality, had walked past her desk 3 times that day. 3 times. And each time his eyes had slid over her like she was part of the furniture. Maybe it made sense. At the courthouse, she'd worn her hair down, loose and wavy. Today it was pulled back in a tight bun. At the courthouse, she'd worn that borrowed cream dress. Today, a simple black blouse and grey slacks from a thrift store. At the courthouse, she'd been backlit by fluorescent lights, her face half-shadowed. Today, she was just another employee, invisible by design. But still. What kind of man marries someone and can't recognize her a week later? Carter, Elena's head snapped up. Harold was standing by her desk, his face flushed, sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Blackwell needs the quarterly reports printed and bound. Conference room A, 10 minutes. Can you handle that? Her mouth went dry. Yes, of course. Don't mess this up. Harold's voice dropped to a whisper. He's already in a mood. Something about the Singapore deal falling through. Just deliver the reports and get out. Don't speak, don't linger. Invisible. Got it? Elena nodded. She found the files in the shared drive, sent them to the printer, and watched as page after page emerged with agonizing slowness. Her hands shook as she collated them, sliding each set into a leather binder. Just deliver them. Don't make eye contact. Get out. Conference room A was on the executive floor. The elevator ride felt like descending into cold water, the pressure building with every floor. When the doors opened, the air itself felt different here. Cleaner, quieter, heavy with money and power. The conference room was all glass and chrome, with a table that could seat 20. But only one person sat there. Damien. He was reading something on his tablet, his jaw tight, one hand drumming a slow rhythm on the table. The skyline of Manhattan spread behind him like a kingdom he'd conquered. Elena knocked softly on the glass door. He didn't look up, just raised one finger. Wait. She stood there holding the binders, her heart hammering. Up close, she could see details she'd missed at the courthouse, a small scar near his left eyebrow, the way his hair was slightly longer on top, styled back with precision, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Finally, he looked up. His gaze passed over her face like a scanner, cold and analytical. No recognition, nothing. Put them there. He gestured to the table. Make sure they're in order. Singapore first, then Tokyo, then London. Elena moved forward, her hands steady despite the chaos in her chest. She laid the binders out carefully, double-checking the labels. Is there anything else, Mr. Blackwell? Her voice came out softer than she intended. No. He was already looking back at his tablet. Close the door on your way out. She turned to leave. Wait. Elena froze. Damien was frowning at one of the binders. This is the wrong quarter. I asked for Q3. This is Q2. Her stomach dropped. She'd printed exactly what Harold had sent her. I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell. I'll get the correct files right away. Do you understand what happens at 2 o'clock? His voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. I have 17 board members sitting down in that room, 17 people who flew in from 3 continents to review our Q3 performance, and you're bringing me last quarter's numbers. It was my first day. I don't care if it's your first hour. He stood, and the movement made her take an involuntary step back. He wasn't shouting. Somehow that made it worse. In this company, there are no excuses, only results. You either deliver or you leave. Do you understand? Elena felt something hot and sharp rise in her chest. Yes, she'd made a mistake. Yes, she should have double-checked. But the way he was looking at her, like she was nothing, like she was less than nothing, something inside her snapped. I understand that mistakes happen, she said, her voice steadier now. I understand that I'm human, and I understand that treating people like they're disposable isn't leadership. It's just cruelty wearing a suit. The silence that followed was absolute. Damien stared at her, really looked at her for the first time. His eyes narrowed slightly, like he was seeing a glitch in his perfectly ordered world. What's your name? Elena Carter. Well, Miss Carter. He leaned against the table, his expression unreadable. You have exactly 8 minutes to get me the correct reports. If you fail, you can collect your things on the way out. Are we clear? She wanted to tell him what he could do with his reports. She wanted to walk out right then, but she thought of her grandmother, of the hospital bills, of the surgery scheduled for next week. So she swallowed her pride and nodded. Crystal clear. She made it back in 7 minutes. The rest of the day passed in a blur of tension and whispered gossip. Apparently no one had ever spoken to Damien Blackwell like that and kept their job. Elena became a minor legend by 5 p.m. Did you hear what the new girl said to him? But she didn't feel legendary. She felt exhausted. At 6, most people had left. Elena was finishing up the last of her data entry when she heard crying. It was coming from the break room. She found a young woman, maybe 19, intern badge clipped to her shirt, sitting on the floor next to the vending machine, her face buried in her hands. Hey, Elena knelt beside her. Are you okay? The girl looked up, her eyes red and swollen. I'm sorry, I'm fine, You don't look fine. A shaky breath. I messed up an order for Mr. Blackwell's lunch meeting. Wrong restaurant, wrong dishes. He didn't yell or anything, he just looked at me like I was stupid. And then he told HR to dock my pay for the wasted food. Fresh tears spilled over. I need this internship. I'm paying my own way through college. I can't afford to lose even 1 day's pay. Something cold settled in Elena's chest. She'd seen men like Damien before, men who measured worth in dollars and productivity, who'd forgotten or never learned that the people around them were human beings with lives and struggles and breaking points. Wait here, Elena said. She didn't think. She just moved. The executive floor was nearly empty now. Damien's office was at the end of the hall behind frosted glass doors with his name etched in chrome letters. She knocked. Come in. He was still working, his desk covered in documents, his tie loosened slightly. The first sign of humanity she'd seen from him all day. Miss Carter. He didn't look up. If you're here to apologize again, I'm not. Eleanor stepped inside, closing the door behind her. I'm here about the intern, the one whose pay you docked. Now he looked up. That's none of your concern. It is when it's unjust. His eyebrows rose slightly. Unjust? She made a mistake, a small one, the kind any person would make on their third week of work. And instead of teaching her, instead of showing her how to do better, you punished her. You took money from someone who probably can't afford to lose it. That's not leadership. That's not even decent. Damien set down his pen slowly. You've worked here for exactly 1 day, Miss Carter, and you think you understand how to run a multi-billion-dollar company. I understand how to treat people like they matter. People matter when they perform, when they deliver results, when they contribute to the success of this organization. Sentiment doesn't build empires. No. Elena's voice was quiet but firm. But it builds loyalty. It builds trust. It builds teams that actually want to show up in the morning instead of living in fear. For a long moment, he just looked at her, really looked, like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't add up. The docking stands, he said finally, but I'll have HR set up a training program for interns. Reduce errors going forward. Will that satisfy your sense of justice? It wasn't enough, but it was something. It's a start. Then we're done here. Eleanor turned to leave, her hand on the door handle. Miss Carter. She looked back. Damien was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You're either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which yet. Maybe I'm just someone who believes people deserve basic human decency, even from their bosses. She left before he could respond. Outside, the city was transitioning into evening. Lights flickered on across the skyline like stars coming to life. Eleanor stood at the bus stop, her breath visible in the cool air, her body finally allowing itself to shake. She'd just confronted her boss, her husband, a man who didn't even know she was his wife. And somehow, impossibly, she'd survived. But as the bus pulled up and she climbed aboard, finding a seat by the window, Elena couldn't shake the memory of that last look he'd given her. Like she'd cracked something, like she'd slipped past his defenses for just a moment. Like maybe beneath all that ice there was something human after all. She just wasn't sure if that made things better or infinitely more complicated. 3 days passed, like walking on a tightrope. Eleanor kept her head down, did her work, and tried to ignore the way Damien's presence seemed to fill every corner of the building, even when he wasn't there. She'd see him in the mornings, striding through the lobby with his phone pressed to his ear, his expression carved from winter. She'd catch glimpses of him through glass walls during meetings, his posture rigid, his voice carrying that same cold authority. He never looked at her twice, and yet she couldn't stop noticing him. It was a strange kind of torture, being married to someone who treated you like a ghost. The contract had been clear: no contact unless necessary, separate lives, a legal arrangement and nothing more. But Elena hadn't expected it to feel quite so much like erasure. At night, alone in her small apartment, she'd look at the marriage certificate tucked in her desk drawer and wonder what kind of man built walls so high he couldn't see over them anymore. Thursday evening, Elena left work early for the first time that week, not because she wanted to, but because she'd made a promise she couldn't break. The bus took her 40 minutes south, through neighborhoods that grew quieter and shabbier with each stop, until she reached the edge of Brooklyn, where rent was cheap and hope was cheaper. She got off at the corner of 5th and Union, in front of a building that had seen better decades, St. Mary's Community Center. The sign was faded, the paint peeling, but light spilled warm and golden through the windows. Inside, she could hear laughter, children's voices. The sound of life lived without pretense. Elena had been volunteering here since she was 16. Every Thursday evening, without fail, she came to help Ms. Rosa run the after-school program for kids whose parents worked late shifts or couldn't afford childcare. Elena! A small body collided with her legs before she'd even made it through the door. She looked down to find Jamie grinning up at her, 7 years old, missing his 2 front teeth, wearing a superhero cape made from a bedsheet. His mother worked 3 jobs. His father had left before he was born, and somehow Jamie still believed in heroes. "Did you bring it?" he asked, his eyes wide with hope. Eleanor smiled and pulled a book from her bag. The Little Prince. Used, pages worn soft from reading, but the illustrations still bright. "Chapter 3 tonight?" "Yes." Jamie grabbed her hand and pulled her inside. The center was organized chaos. 20 kids between ages 5 and 12, some doing homework at mismatched tables, others playing with donated toys, a few clustered around Ms. Rosa, who was teaching them to fold origami cranes. Ms. Rosa looked up and smiled. She was 68, with silver hair and hands that never stopped moving, always creating, always giving. She'd run this center for 30 years on donations, grants, and sheer stubborn love. "Mija," she said warmly, "right on time. We have a new one today. Miguel. 9 years old. Just moved here from Honduras. Doesn't speak much English yet, but he loves to draw." Eleanor found Miguel sitting alone in the corner, a crayon clutched in his small fist, sketching something on the back of a flyer. When she approached, he looked up with eyes that held too much sadness for a child. "Hola," Elena said softly, kneeling beside him. Her Spanish was rusty but functional. "Puedo ver?" Miguel hesitated, then turned the paper toward her. It was a house. Simple lines, a triangle roof, 4 windows, and standing in front of it, 2 stick figures holding hands. "Tu familia?" Elena asked gently. He nodded. "Mi mamá y yo, in Honduras." His voice was barely a whisper. "She's still there, working. To bring me here, she sent me with my uncle, but now—" His eyes filled. "I miss her." Eleanor's throat tightened. She knew that ache. That feeling of being separated from the people you loved, of carrying a weight too heavy for small shoulders. She spent the next hour with Miguel, helping him with his English homework, letting him teach her Spanish words she'd forgotten, drawing pictures together. By the time the session ended, he was smiling, small, tentative, but real. As the children filtered out with their parents or guardians, Elena helped Ms. Rosa clean up, folding chairs and sweeping crayon shavings. "You're good with them," Ms. Rosa said, stacking books. "Patient, present, that's rare these days. Everyone's in such a hurry." "They deserve someone who sees them," Elena replied quietly. "So do you, Mija." Elena paused mid-sweep. "What do you mean?" Ms. Rosa's eyes were knowing and kind. "You give so much, but you don't let anyone give back. You carry things alone. I see it, that heaviness in you." Eleanor wanted to deny it, but standing there in the warm light of the center, surrounded by the echoes of children's laughter, she felt the weight of the past 2 weeks crash over her. The marriage, the job, the constant pretending, the exhaustion of being invisible. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice cracked. Ms. Rosa pulled her into a hug that smelled like lavender and old books and safety. "You don't have to be fine all the time, Elena. Not here." And for just a moment, Elena let herself be held. Outside the community center, the evening had deepened into full darkness. Elena stood on the sidewalk, breathing in the cool air, trying to gather the pieces of herself back together. That's when she saw it. A black car. Sleek, expensive, completely out of place in this neighborhood. It was parked across the street, engine idling, windows tinted, and leaning against it, arms crossed, face shadowed but unmistakable, was Damien Blackwell. Elena's heart stopped. No, this isn't possible. She must have frozen because he straightened and started walking toward her. Not hurried, not uncertain. Just that same measured, controlled stride that made the world rearrange itself around him. He stopped 3 feet away. Miss Carter. Her mind was racing. What is he doing here? How did he find me? Does he know? Mr. Blackwell. Her voice was steadier than she felt. What are you doing in Brooklyn? I could ask you the same question. I volunteer here, every Thursday, have for years. She lifted her chin. Is there a company policy against helping children in my free time? Something flickered across his face. No, there isn't. Silence stretched between them. Elena could hear the distant sound of traffic, a dog barking, someone's television through an open window. How did you find me? She asked finally. I didn't. He looked past her at the community center, its warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. I had a meeting in the area, development property, potential acquisition. His gaze came back to her. I saw you getting off the bus. I was curious. You left work early. First time this week. I wondered why. He paused. So I followed you. Eleanor's stomach twisted. That's inappropriate. I know. For the first time since she'd met him, Damien looked almost uncertain. I should have just left, but I saw you go inside and I wanted to understand. Understand what? Why you spoke to me the way you did, in my office, about the intern. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its perfect order. No one talks to me like that. No one challenges me. They either agree or they quit. But you stayed. You looked me in the eye and told me I was wrong. And then you came here. He gestured at the building behind her. To spend your evening with children who can't give you anything in return. No networking opportunities. No career advancement. Just time. Attention. Care. He shook his head slowly. I don't understand people like you. People like me. People who give without calculating the return on investment. Elena felt something shift inside her. Standing there in the dim streetlight, looking at this man who had everything and seemed to feel nothing, she saw past the armor for just a moment. He wasn't cold. He was lost. Mr. Blackwell, she said quietly, can I show you something? He hesitated, then nodded. Eleanor led him to the window of the community center. Inside, Ms. Rosa was still cleaning up, and Jamie had come back. His mother must have been late picking him up. The boy was helping, carefully stacking chairs that were almost as tall as he was, his superhero cape dragging behind him. That's Jamie, Eleanor said. His mom works as a night custodian, a weekend waitress, and does online data entry during the day. She makes about $30,000 a year. Jamie wears the same 3 outfits every week. His shoes have holes in them. But every Thursday he shows up here with the biggest smile you've ever seen. Damien was watching silently. Last month he found $20 on the street. $20. For most kids here, that's a fortune. Do you know what he did with it? Damien shook his head. He bought crayons and coloring books, and he donated them to the center so the other kids would have something new to play with. Elena's voice softened. He gave away his fortune because making other people happy mattered more than keeping it for himself. She turned to face Damien fully. "That's the return on investment you don't understand, Mr. Blackwell. Some things can't be measured in spreadsheets or quarterly reports. Some things you only see when you stop calculating and start feeling." Damien stared at her for a long moment. In the amber streetlight, his face looked different, younger, more human. "What's your story?" he asked suddenly. "What? Everyone has a reason, a why. You work entry-level at my company, you volunteer here, you stand up to your boss like you've got nothing to lose." His eyes searched hers. "Why?" Elena's hand instinctively went to her chest, where beneath her blouse she wore a small silver locket. Inside was a photo of her grandmother, smiling, whole, before the cancer. "Because someone once told me that we're not measured by what we take from the world, but by what we give back to it." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "And because when you've been powerless, when you've needed help and had nowhere to turn, you remember. You remember what it feels like to be invisible. So you make sure other people know they're seen." Something cracked in Damien's expression. Just for a second, the ice melted, and she saw something raw underneath. Regret, maybe, or recognition. The moment broke when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and the walls came back up instantly. "I have a call I need to take." He stepped back, all business again. "Thank you for your time, Miss Carter." He was halfway to his car when Elena called out, "Mr. Blackwell." He turned. "The intern whose pay you docked, her name is Sarah. She's studying computer science. She wants to design systems that help people with disabilities navigate technology. She works here 3 nights a week because we can't afford to pay her, but she shows up anyway." Eleanor held his gaze. "Maybe next time, before you calculate the cost of a mistake, consider the cost of breaking someone's spirit." Damien didn't respond. He just got in his car and drove away, leaving Elena standing in the pool of streetlight, her heart beating too fast, wondering what she'd just set in motion. Inside the community center, Ms. Rosa appeared at the window. She'd been watching. She smiled and gave Elena a small nod, as if to say, "Some seeds take time to grow." Elena turned and walked to the bus stop, but she couldn't shake the image of Damien's face in that moment when the armor cracked. Beneath the ice, she'd seen something she hadn't expected. Loneliness. And maybe, just maybe, the smallest seed of hope that he could be something more than the man he'd become. Friday morning arrived with the kind of silence that precedes storms. Eleanor was at her desk by 8, the office still half empty, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "We need to talk." "My office, 9 a.m. DB. Her stomach dropped. She'd barely slept, replaying their conversation outside the community center, wondering if she'd gone too far, said too much. Now he was summoning her. At 8:55, she stood outside his office, her reflection ghost-like in the frosted glass. She knocked. "Come in." Damien was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city. He didn't turn when she entered. "Close the door." She did. The click echoed like a verdict. "I looked into the community center last night," he said quietly. "St. Mary's, 40 years old, serves 200 children annually, operating on a budget of $80,000 a year, held together by donations and volunteers." He finally turned to face her. "They're 3 months behind on rent. The building owner wants to sell to a developer. They have until the end of the month." Eleanor's breath caught. I didn't know." "Ms. Rosa didn't tell you because she didn't want you to worry. She's trying to fundraise, but it's not enough. He moved to his desk, pulled out a leather checkbook. I'm going to write a check. 500,000. It'll cover the back rent, buy the building outright, and fund operations for the next 5 years. Elena's heart stopped. You... what? Consider it done. He started writing, his pen scratching across the paper with that same cold efficiency. I'll have my assistant coordinate with Ms. Rosa this afternoon. He tore out the check, held it out to her. Elena didn't move. Take it, he said, confused by her hesitation. No. His eyebrows rose. Excuse me? I said no. Elena's voice was trembling but firm. You can't do this. I'm trying to help. You're trying to fix something with money because that's all you know how to do. The words burst out before she could stop them. And you think you can just write a check and solve 40 years of struggle? You think money erases the fact that you don't actually care about those kids? You just want to feel better about yourself? Damien's expression went cold. You don't know what I care about, don't I? Elena stepped closer. Last night you saw something real, something that made you uncomfortable because it reminded you that there's a world outside your tower where people matter more than profits. And now you want to throw money at it so you can go back to not thinking about it. That's not... You can't buy kindness, Mr. Blackwell. Her voice cracked. You have to live it. You have to show up. You have to be present. Those kids don't need your money. They need people who see them as human beings, not charity cases or tax write-offs. The silence that followed was devastating. Damien's jaw was tight, his eyes hard. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then tell me I'm wrong. You're fired. The words hit like a physical blow. Elena stared at him. What? You're fired, Miss Carter. Effective immediately. His voice was perfectly controlled, each word a knife. You've been here less than a week, and you've done nothing but challenge authority, disrupt workflow, and now you're refusing corporate charity that could save an institution you claim to care about. Clearly, this isn't the right fit. You're firing me for telling you the truth. I'm firing you for insubordination. Something broke in Elena's chest, not just the job, though she needed it desperately, not just the money, though her grandmother's surgery was in 5 days, but the realization that she'd been right about him all along. He was just ice all the way through. Fine. Her voice was hollow. But that check, keep it. St. Mary's doesn't need money that comes with strings attached. They need people who actually give a damn. She turned to leave. Wait. Elena stopped, her hand on the door. The intern, Sarah. Damien's voice was quieter now. I restored her pay, and I set up the training program you suggested. Elena looked back. For just a second, she saw something in his face. Something almost vulnerable. That doesn't change what you are, she said softly. It just means you're capable of learning, whether you choose to or not. That's up to you. She walked out. Eleanor cleaned out her desk in under 10 minutes. A few personal items, a coffee mug, the book she'd been reading on lunch breaks. Victoria watched from across the office with barely concealed satisfaction. Didn't last long, did you? Victoria said as Eleanor passed. Eleanor didn't respond. She just walked to the elevator, pressed the button and waited. The doors opened, and her world ended. Standing in the elevator, holding a Starbucks cup and a leather portfolio, was Margaret Sinclair, Damien's assistant from the contract signing, the woman who'd coordinated everything. Margaret's eyes widened. Elena. Elena's blood turned to ice. Margaret stepped out of the elevator, her face confused. "What are you doing here? I thought you and Mr. Blackwell agreed to minimal contact during the contract period. You know her." Victoria had appeared beside them, her predatory instincts sensing drama. Margaret looked between them, realization dawning too late. "Oh, God. You didn't know." "Know what?" Victoria's voice was sharp. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The elevator doors closed behind her, sealing her fate. "Miss Sinclair," Victoria pressed. "Know what?" Margaret's face had gone pale. This is confidential." But Victoria was already moving, her heels clicking rapidly toward Damien's office. Elena's legs finally unfroze, and she ran after her, but it was too late. Victoria threw open the door without knocking. "Is it true?" she demanded. Damien looked up, annoyed. "Is what true? That you're married to her?" Victoria pointed at Elena, who had stopped in the doorway, her face white. "That the junior assistant you just fired is your wife?" The silence was absolute. Damien's eyes locked on Elena's, and in that moment everything changed. She saw the exact second recognition hit him. His face went slack with shock. The coffee cup in his hand tilted, forgotten. His lips parted, but no sound came out. "Elena?" His voice was barely a whisper. The name. He'd never said her first name before. At the courthouse, she'd been Miss Carter. Here, she'd been Miss Carter. Just a signature. Just a face he couldn't be bothered to remember. But now, finally, he saw her. Victoria's eyes gleamed with malicious triumph. "Oh, this is rich. The CEO married to the help. Wait until the board hears—" "Get out." Damien's voice was deadly quiet. "But, get out now, or you're fired." Victoria fled. Elena and Damien stood frozen, staring at each other across the expanse of his office. Outside the glass walls, people were starting to notice, to whisper, to point. "You knew," Damien said finally. "You knew who I was, this whole time." Elena's hands were shaking. "You walked past me at the courthouse. You didn't even look at me. And then you didn't recognize me here. What was I supposed to say? Hi, I'm your wife that you forgot existed?" "I didn't forget." "Yes, you did." Her voice broke. "I was invisible to you. A transaction, a piece of paper. You married me and never once asked my name, my story, anything about who I am. So forgive me if I didn't rush to remind you." Damien ran both hands through his hair, his perfect composure shattered. "This isn't... I never meant..." His phone rang. The display showed board chairman. He stared at it like it was a snake. "Don't answer it," Elena whispered. But he did. Some habits were too ingrained. "Blackwell." A pause. His face went grey. "I understand. Yes, I'll be there." He ended the call. "Emergency board meeting. 1 hour." He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. "The contract, if they find out about the marriage clause, about why we did this, they'll remove me. Everything I've built will mean nothing," Elena finished quietly. "Because it was built on lies." "Elena, don't." She held up a hand. "You got what you wanted. Your inheritance, your company. I got my payment. My grandmother gets her surgery. The contract is fulfilled. We're done. We're married. On paper." She pulled off the simple gold band she'd worn on a chain around her neck. Hidden, always hidden. She set it on his desk. "Not in any way that matters. She walked out. This time, he didn't stop her. Elena made it to the street before the tears came. She stood on the corner, people flowing past like water around a stone, and let herself break. She'd been fired, exposed. And somehow, impossibly, her heart hurt more than any of it. Because for just a moment in the community center's light, she'd thought she'd seen something human in Damien Blackwell. But she'd been wrong. Her phone buzzed, a text from the hospital. Surgery scheduled for Tuesday. Please confirm payment received. Elena closed her eyes. The first payment from the contract had covered the deposit. But the surgery, the recovery, the medications, she still needed the final payment. The $100,000 that came at the end of the contract term, 11 months from now, she'd just thrown away her only chance to survive. The board meeting was a massacre. Damien sat at the head of the table, 17 faces staring at him like judges at an execution. The chairman's voice was cold, clinical, as he read from a tablet. A contract marriage to secure inheritance rights. Failure to disclose a conflict of interest when employing your spouse. Termination of said spouse under questionable circumstances. He looked up. This is a PR nightmare, Damien, and more importantly, it violates several clauses in your father's will. I can explain. Can you? Another board member leaned forward. Can you explain why you married a woman you didn't recognize? Why you fired her before the contract was fulfilled? Why we're finding out about this from office gossip instead of proper disclosure? Damien had no answer. Because the truth was worse than anything they imagined. He'd been so focused on building his empire that he'd forgotten to build a life. He'd married a woman and never looked at her face. He'd fired her for telling him the truth. He'd spent so long being cold that he'd forgotten what warmth felt like. Effective immediately, the chairman said. You're suspended pending investigation. Marcus will serve as interim CEO. You have 24 hours to remove your personal effects from the building. The room spun. You can't. We can. And we are. The chairman stood. Maybe you'll use this time to remember that companies are built by people, Damien, not machines. By Friday evening, the news had spread like wildfire. Blackwell CEO suspended after contract marriage scandal. The headlines were everywhere. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters camped outside his penthouse. His carefully constructed world was collapsing. Damien stood in his empty office, former office, holding a cardboard box of belongings, awards, photos of buildings he'd financed, a crystal paperweight shaped like a skyscraper, symbols of success that suddenly felt hollow. His phone buzzed. Margaret. Mr. Blackwell, I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can do. He typed back. Find Elena. Make sure the final contract payment goes through immediately. She needs it. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, I'll try. Damien set down his phone. For the first time in 15 years, he had nowhere to be. No meetings, no calls, no empire to run. Just silence. And the echo of Elena's words. You can't buy kindness. You have to live it. Saturday morning, Damien woke to his phone ringing. Unknown number. Mr. Blackwell? A woman's voice, elderly, unfamiliar. This is Rosa Mendez, from St. Mary's Community Center. His chest tightened. Miss Rosa. How did you... Elena gave me your number, long time ago, for emergencies. A pause. This is an emergency. What happened? It's Elena. She's here at Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. She collapsed last night. Exhaustion, they said. Stress. But Mr. Blackwell, her voice cracked. She won't let them treat her properly. She keeps saying she can't afford it, that she needs to save money for her grandmother's surgery. She's trying to check herself out against medical advice. Damien was already grabbing his keys. Which room? 4th floor, room 412. But Mr. Blackwell, she doesn't want to see you. She made me promise not to call you. I'm breaking that promise because... A long breath. Because that girl gives everything to everyone and never asks for help. And right now she needs someone who can help, whether she wants to admit it or not. I'm on my way. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Damien found room 412 at the end of a long hallway, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Through the small window, he could see her. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, arguing with a nurse. Even from here, he could see how pale she was, how thin. Dark circles under her eyes, her hands trembling slightly as she signed forms. He pushed open the door. Elena's head snapped up. "What are you doing here?" "Ms. Rosa called me. I told her not to." Elena stood too quickly and swayed. The nurse caught her arm. "Miss Carter, please," the nurse said firmly. "You need to rest. Your blood pressure is dangerously low, you're dehydrated, and your labs show severe stress markers." "I'm fine." "You're not fine." Damien stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Sit down before you fall down." "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore." But even as she said it, Eleanor sank back onto the bed, her body betraying her words. The nurse looked between them, sensing the tension. "I'll give you two a moment. But Miss Carter, you're not leaving this hospital until a doctor clears you. That's non-negotiable." She left. Silence filled the room like water rising. "You shouldn't be here," Elena said quietly, not looking at him. "Probably not." Damien stayed by the door, keeping distance between them. "But I am." "Why? Guilty conscience?" "Yes." The honesty seemed to surprise her. She finally looked at him, really looked. And her expression shifted from anger to something softer, concern. "You look terrible," she said. Damien almost laughed. "So do you." "I have an excuse." "What's yours?" "I lost everything." He said it simply, like stating a fact. "The board suspended me. The company I built is being run by someone else. The press is camped outside my home. My lawyers say the inheritance might be contested. Everything I spent 15 years building is gone." Elena's face was unreadable. "And you came here to tell me this because none of it matters." "What?" Damien moved closer, slowly, like approaching something fragile. "I spent my whole life thinking success was measured in buildings and bank accounts. That being strong meant being cold. That caring was weakness." He stopped a few feet from her bed. "And then you told me I was wrong, and I fired you for it, because the truth scared me more than losing everything." Eleanor's eyes were bright, but she didn't cry. "Damien, let me finish, please." He sat in the chair beside her bed, and for the first time they were eye level, equal. "After you left, I went back to the community center. I talked to Ms. Rosa. I met Jamie, Miguel, Sarah. I sat there for 3 hours just watching, listening, and I realized something." "What?" "I've been so focused on building empires that I forgot to build a life. I married you because you were a solution to a problem. I didn't look at you because I'd stopped looking at anyone. I didn't see you because I'd stopped seeing myself." A tear slipped down Elena's cheek. "You still don't understand. It's not about seeing. It's about feeling, about being present, about..." about showing up. Damien reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This is the final contract payment, 100,000, plus another 100,000 for the hospital bills, yours and your grandmother's, all of it, no strings. Eleanor stared at the envelope like it might burn her. I can't accept that. Yes, you can. Damien, this doesn't fix. I know. His voice was soft, raw. I know money doesn't fix what I broke. I know I can't buy forgiveness or kindness or whatever this is between us. But your grandmother needs surgery, you need treatment, and whether you hate me or not, I can help with that. So please, let me do this one thing right. Eleanor's hands were shaking as she took the envelope. Why? Because Thursday night, outside that community center, you showed me something I'd forgotten existed. Damien's throat was tight. You showed me that beneath all the ice, I might still be human, and even if you never forgive me, even if we never speak again after today, I need you to know that you changed something in me. The machines beeped steadily. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried. Life continued around them, indifferent to their small tragedy. I don't hate you, Eleanor whispered finally. I hate what you became, but I saw who you could be. For just a moment, outside that center, I saw it. Help me find that person again. I can't save you, Damien. You have to save yourself. Then teach me how. Eleanor closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something had shifted. The surgery is Tuesday, my grandmother. She's at Mount Sinai. If you want to understand what really matters, be there. I will. Not with money, not with power. Just be there, be present, be human. Damien nodded. I'll be there. He stood to leave, but Elena's hand shot out, catching his wrist. The touch was electric, the first time they'd truly touched since that cold handshake at the courthouse. Damien. He looked down at her. Thank you, she said softly, for the help, and for finally seeing me. Something cracked in his chest. I'm sorry I didn't see you sooner. She let go of his wrist, but the warmth lingered. Sunday night, Damien couldn't sleep. He stood in his penthouse looking out at the city he'd conquered but never truly seen, and he made a decision. Monday morning, he showed up at St. Mary's Community Center wearing jeans and a simple sweater. No suit. No armor. Ms. Rosa opened the door, her eyes wide. Mr. Blackwell, I'd like to volunteer, if you'll have me. His voice was uncertain, humble. I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to learn. Ms. Rosa studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled. Come in, Jamie's been asking about you. Inside, Damien found chaos, beautiful, messy, human chaos. And for the first time in 15 years, he didn't try to control it. He just let himself be part of it. Tuesday morning arrived wrapped in pale sunlight. Mount Sinai Hospital, 6th floor. The surgery waiting room was quiet, filled with the kind of silence that comes when hope and fear sit side by side, holding hands. Eleanor sat in a plastic chair, her fingers laced together so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She'd been there since 5 a.m. The surgery had started at 6. It was now almost 9. She heard footsteps and looked up, expecting a doctor. It was Damien. He carried 2 paper coffee cups and a small paper bag. He was wearing the same jeans and sweater from yesterday, slightly rumpled now. His hair wasn't perfectly styled. His face showed stubble. He looked nothing like the CEO who'd fired her 10 days ago. He looked human. I brought coffee, he said quietly, and bagels. I didn't know if you'd eaten. Elena's throat tightened. You came. I said I would. He sat beside her, not too close, respecting her space. He handed her a cup. One cream, no sugar. Ms. Rosa told me how you take it. Elena accepted the coffee with trembling hands. You've been talking to Ms. Rosa. I've been volunteering since yesterday. A small, self-deprecating smile. I'm terrible at it. Jamie beat me at checkers 4 times. Miguel taught me how to say, you're not very good at this in Spanish. But I'm learning. Despite everything, Elena felt herself smile. You're really doing this? I'm trying. He leaned back, cradling his own coffee. Yesterday, I helped Sarah, the intern, set up new computers for the kids. She barely spoke to me at first. Can't blame her. But by the end, she was showing me coding programs she's developing. Accessibility software for kids with autism. His voice softened. You were right about her. She's brilliant. And I almost destroyed her for a lunch order. They sat in silence for a moment, sipping coffee, the morning light streaming through the windows. How are you holding up? Damien asked gently. Elena's composure cracked. I'm terrified. The cancer spread more than they thought. The surgery is complicated. If they can't get it all... She couldn't finish. May I? Damien gestured toward her hand. She nodded. He took her hand in his. His palm was warm now. Not cold like that handshake at the courthouse. His thumb traced slow, gentle circles on her skin. She's going to make it, he said quietly. And when she does, she's going to wake up and see her granddaughter who moved mountains to save her. That's worth fighting for. Eleanor leaned her head on his shoulder. Just for a moment. Just to borrow some strength. They stayed like that until the surgeon appeared. The surgery was successful. Eleanor's knees nearly buckled. Damien's hand tightened on hers, holding her steady. The surgeon smiled tiredly. We removed all visible traces of the tumor. She'll need chemotherapy and close monitoring, but her prognosis is good. She's a fighter, your grandmother. Can I see her? She's in recovery. Give us about an hour, then yes. When the surgeon left, Elena turned to Damien and did something that surprised them both. She hugged him, really hugged him. Not a polite embrace, but the kind of desperate, grateful hug that comes when relief crashes over you like a wave. Damien froze for just a second, then his arms came around her, holding her gently like something precious. His face pressed into her hair. Thank you, she whispered, for being here, for the money, for everything. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. She pulled back to look at him, her eyes bright with tears. 2 weeks ago, you were a stranger, a cold, impossible stranger. And now what? Now I see you, the real you, the person underneath all that ice. Something shifted in Damien's expression. Elena, I need to tell you something. Okay. The board meeting, when they suspended me, I could have fought it. I have lawyers, leverage, enough dirt on half those board members to bury them. He took a breath. But I didn't, because they were right. I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone my father would have been ashamed of. Your father. He built Blackwell Industries from nothing, but he never forgot where he came from. He donated millions to schools, hospitals, community programs. And when he died, he put that marriage clause in his will because he knew I'd become too cold, too isolated. He thought marriage would force me to let someone in. Damien's laugh was hollow. Instead, I turned even that into a transaction. Elena touched his face gently. But you're changing, that counts for something. Does it? I still lost everything. No. Her voice was firm. You lost a title, a building, numbers in an account. But you're finding something more important. You're finding yourself. An hour later, Eleanor sat beside her grandmother's hospital bed, holding her frail hand. The machines beeped steadily. Her grandmother's eyes fluttered open. "Mija," she whispered. "You look tired." Elena laughed through tears. "You just had surgery and you're worried about me." "Always." Her grandmother's eyes focused. "Where did you get the money for this?" Elena hesitated. I got married, abuela." Her grandmother's eyebrows rose. "Married? It was a contract for money. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd try to stop me." Elena squeezed her hand. "But it's okay. Everything's going to be okay now. This husband, is he good to you?" Elena thought about Damien in the waiting room, Damien at the community center, Damien holding her hand through the longest morning of her life. "He's learning to be," she said softly. 3 weeks passed. Damien threw himself into St. Mary's with the same intensity he'd once given to boardrooms, but this time it was different. He listened more than he spoke. He followed instead of led. He learned names, stories, dreams. He helped Jamie with homework, taught Miguel English through drawing, set up a scholarship fund for Sarah's computer science degree, and slowly, painfully, he began to understand what Elena had been trying to tell him all along. Wealth wasn't about what you had, it was about what you gave. One Thursday evening, after the kids had left, Damien found Ms. Rosa in her small office, surrounded by bills and donation forms. "The building is secure," he said. "I transferred the deed to the center. It's yours. No strings." "Ms." Rosa looked up, tears in her eyes. "Mr. Blackwell, Damien, please. Damien, this is too much." "It's not enough, but it's a start." He sat across from her. "I want to do more. Create a foundation. Fund centers like this across the city. Not as charity, as investment in futures, in people, in the things that actually matter." "What changed?" Ms. Rosa asked gently. "When you first came here, you were so cold, lost." Damien smiled sadly. "Someone showed me I was building monuments to my own emptiness, and it was time to build something real." Friday afternoon, Damien stood outside Mount Sinai. Elena had texted him, "Abuela's being discharged. Can you come?" He found them in the lobby. Elena's grandmother in a wheelchair wrapped in a blanket, her face thin but smiling. Elena stood beside her, radiant. When her grandmother saw Damien, she studied him with sharp, knowing eyes. "So you're the husband?" Damien knelt beside the wheelchair, putting himself at her level. "Yes, ma'am, though I don't deserve that title, not yet. Eleanor tells me you're trying. Every day, I'm still learning." Her grandmother reached out and patted his cheek. "Good. A man who admits he doesn't know everything is a man worth knowing." She looked at Elena. "I like this one. Keep him." Elena blushed. "Abuela." "What?" "I'm old. I can say what I want." They laughed. Real laughter. The kind that comes from joy, not just politeness. Later, as they waited for the car service, Elena turned to Damien. "The board called me," she said quietly. "They want to meet with me. Ask about the marriage, the contract, everything." Damien's face went tight. "You don't have to do that. I can handle. I want to." Her voice was calm, clear. I want to tell them the truth, that you made a mistake, that you're fixing it, that people deserve second chances when they're genuinely trying to change. Elena, wealth means nothing if your heart is poor. She stepped closer. But a poor heart that's learning to be rich, that's worth fighting for. Damien looked at her, really looked, and saw not just the woman he'd married on paper, but the woman who'd saved him from himself. I don't deserve you, he whispered. No, Elena agreed, a small smile playing on her lips. But maybe someday you will. She kissed his cheek. Soft, brief, a promise. See you Monday, at the center. She helped her grandmother into the car and they drove away, leaving Damien standing in the autumn sunlight, feeling something he hadn't felt in 15 years. Hope. 6 months later. The rain fell softly against the windows of St. Mary's Community Centre, each drop catching the warm light from inside like tiny stars. Spring had arrived in Brooklyn, bringing with it new beginnings and the kind of hope that grows slowly, quietly, from seeds planted in winter. Inside, the centre had transformed. New computers lined one wall, donated by the Blackwell Foundation. Fresh paint brightened every room. Bookshelves overflowed with stories. And in the corner, a grand piano, old but restored, its keys ivory smooth, sat waiting for small hands to bring it back to life. Eleanor stood by the window watching the rain, a cup of coffee warming her hands. She wore simple jeans and a soft blue sweater. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders. She looked peaceful, whole. Behind her, she heard laughter. She turned to see Damien on the floor, surrounded by children. Jamie was showing him a drawing. Miguel was teaching him a new Spanish word. Sarah, now a paid instructor at the center, was setting up a coding workshop. And Damien was in the middle of it all, his sleeves rolled up, his tie gone, actually smiling. He caught Elena's eye across the room, and something passed between them. Not words, just understanding, connection, the kind of intimacy that comes from seeing someone not at their best, but at their most real. 6 months ago, they'd been strangers bound by paper and desperation. Now they were something else entirely. After the session ended and the children had left, Eleanor and Damien stood together in the quiet center, the rain still falling outside. The board meeting is tomorrow, Damien said softly. They're voting on my reinstatement. Eleanor turned to face him. Are you nervous? Terrified. He smiled. But not for the reasons I thought I'd be. 6 months ago, losing that company felt like dying. Now, he looked around the center. Now, I know that if they say no, I'll be okay. Because this, he gestured to the space around them, this matters more than any boardroom ever did. What will you do if they reinstate you? Change everything. His voice was quiet but certain. Restructure the company around people, not just profits. Create more foundations, fund more centers, hire people like Sarah who have talent but need chances, build something my father would actually be proud of. And if they don't reinstate you, Damien stepped closer, then I'll do it anyway. Just smaller, slower, but no less real. Elena smiled. You've really changed. You changed me. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. That night outside this center, when you told me I didn't understand the return on investment of kindness, that was the moment everything shifted. You showed me I'd been measuring my life with the wrong ruler. And now I measure it in moments like this, in Jamie's smile when he finally reads a full sentence, in Miguel's excitement when he shows me his drawings, in the way Sarah's eyes light up when her code works. His hand cupped her cheek. In the way you look at me now, like I'm finally becoming someone worth knowing. Eleanor's breath caught. Damien. I know we started this all wrong. I know I hurt you. I know the contract says we have 6 more months, and then we can walk away, clean slate, no obligations. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But Elena, I don't want to walk away. Not from you. Not from this. Not from the person I'm becoming when I'm with you. What are you saying? I'm saying let's start over. No contract, no transaction. Just 2 people trying to build something real. He smiled nervously. Hi, I'm Damien Blackwell. I used to be a workaholic CEO with ice in his veins. Now I'm a guy who volunteers at a community center and is slowly learning that the best investments don't show up on spreadsheets. Would you like to have coffee sometime? Elena laughed, tears shining in her eyes. I'm Elena Carter. I'm a woman who thought she had to marry a stranger to save her grandmother. Turns out I saved myself instead, and maybe I helped save someone else along the way. She stepped closer. Coffee sounds perfect, but fair warning. I take mine with 1 cream, no sugar. I know. His voice was soft. I pay attention now. They stood there in the golden light of the center, the rain drumming gently outside, and for the first time since they'd met, Damien kissed her. Not a business transaction, not an obligation, just a kiss. Soft, careful, full of promise and possibility, and all the messy, beautiful uncertainty of something real. When they pulled apart, Elena rested her forehead against his. We're really doing this, she whispered. If you'll have me. The real me, not the CEO, not the billionaire. Just Damien. Flawed, learning, trying every day to be better. That's the only version I ever wanted. 1 year later, the Blackwell Foundation headquarters opened in the heart of Brooklyn in a renovated building 3 blocks from St. Mary's. Not a skyscraper, just a 3-story brick building with wide windows that let in light and walls covered in children's artwork. The lobby held a plaque. Wealth means nothing if your heart is poor, but a heart that learns to give becomes richer than any empire. In memory of James Blackwell, who knew what really mattered. Damien stood at the entrance, greeting every person who walked through. Beside him stood Elena, not as his contract wife, not as his employee, but as his partner, co-director of the foundation. His equal in every way that counted. They'd remarried 3 months ago. Small ceremony. Just Ms. Rosa, Elena's grandmother, Jamie, Miguel, Sarah, and a handful of people who'd become family. No courthouse, no contract. Just vows spoken from the heart. I promise to see you every day, fully, completely. I promise to show up in the hard moments, in the quiet moments, in all the moments that matter. I promise to measure my life not by what I build, but by who I become because of you. The board had reinstated Damien, but on his terms. He'd restructured Blackwell Industries from the ground up. Fair wages, mental health support, community investment, profit sharing. The stock had dipped initially, but after 6 months it soared higher than ever. Turned out companies built on humanity were more sustainable than ones built on fear. Now, watching the foundation's opening day, seeing dozens of families stream through the doors to access free childcare, tutoring, job training, and support services, Damien felt something he'd never felt in any boardroom. Peace. Elena slipped her hand into his. You okay? Better than okay. He squeezed her hand. I was just thinking about that night. The courthouse. How we shook hands like strangers and I walked away without looking back. Seems like a lifetime ago. It was. I was a different person then. He turned to face her fully. Cold millionaire CEO agreed to one last contract marriage. The woman who showed up changed his life forever. Elena smiled. The woman who showed up changed her own life. You just helped her see she was stronger than she knew. We saved each other. Yeah. She leaned up and kissed him softly. We did. Evening. The rain had returned, softer now, more like mist than storm. Damien and Elena sat in the Foundation's library, the lights dimmed, just the two of them in comfortable silence. Elena was reading a book to prepare for tomorrow's session. Damien was beside her, sketching designs for a new community garden project. Their legs were tangled together on the couch. Simple, domestic, real. Hey, Elena said suddenly. Do you ever regret it, the way we started? Damien set down his pencil and looked at her. Really looked. No. Because every mistake, every cold moment, every time I failed to see you, it led us here, to this. And I wouldn't change a single second if it meant losing what we have now. Elena's eyes shimmered. Me neither. Outside, the city hummed with life. Millions of stories unfolding in the rain. Millions of people trying, failing, learning, growing. And somewhere in all that chaos, two people who'd started as strangers had found something that couldn't be bought or sold or calculated. They'd found home. 3 years later. Damien stood in front of the United Nations, addressing a conference on corporate social responsibility. Behind him, a screen showed photos from the Blackwell Foundation's work, centers in 12 cities now, thousands of families served, hundreds of jobs created. But the last slide was different. It was a photo of Jamie, now 10 years old, standing proudly in front of St. Mary's holding a certificate. First in my class. 3 years ago, Damien said, his voice clear and steady. I thought success was measured in buildings and bank accounts. I thought being strong meant being cold. I thought the only investments worth making were ones with guaranteed returns. He paused. I was wrong about everything. He clicked to the next slide. The community center. The faces of children. Ms. Rosa, Sarah, Miguel. These are my returns on investment. Not just numbers, people, futures, hope. His voice softened. A wise woman once told me that you can't buy kindness, you have to live it. She taught me that wealth means nothing if your heart is poor. And she showed me that the richest hearts are the ones that finally learn to give. The audience was silent, listening. So I challenge every person in this room. What are you building? Monuments to your own success? Or bridges to other people's futures? Because at the end of your life, no one remembers your quarterly earnings. They remember how you made them feel, how you showed up, how you cared. He looked directly at the camera. I thought it was just one last contract, one last transaction, but it became the beginning of everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because sometimes the richest hearts are the ones that finally learn to give. And sometimes the greatest transformation begins with a single choice: to see, to show up, to be human. What will you choose today? The transformation is complete. The circle closes where it began, but everything has changed. The cold billionaire learned to feel. The invisible woman learned her worth. And together, they built something that money could never buy, a life that matters. Thank you for this journey.